we've seen more layoffs at John Deere, and our economy, I think we all realize, is probably slowing down because of the farm markets mostly. Farmers usually, if they have a buck, spend a buck. You know what farmers always say about money? It does. It's like manure. If you don't spread it around, it doesn't do you no good unless you spread it around. If I get that out right. So maybe the legislature's idea is that way too. That it doesn't do us any good to have tax money unless we spread it around. So I guess those are my opening comments. For the first question, what are the bills that I was most pleased to see pass out of the committee? Well, the first one's got to be the gas tax. And of course, we already passed that before the end of the funnel week, so you realize that. But that issue has taken up more time and energy in the last 5 to 10 years than, I don't know the amount of, if you knew the amount of travel people have spent going to the Capitol to lobby to increase that gas tax, we probably could have built a new, we could have finished Highway 20 for sure, I think, on that alone. But that was a major one to get out of the way because it's huge for the state, it's economic development, and it's kind of like your roof on your house. If you get a hole in it and you don't fix that hole in your roof, pretty soon the roof's going to fall down and your ceiling's going to fall down. And same way with roads. If you don't fix them on a timely basis, they get so bad that you have to do way more work on them to fix them up than you would if you just maintain them in the first place. So I'm glad that bill is through. Another one I'd like to see that came through the funnel was a Senate File 462, which deals with EpiPens. Does anybody here know what an EpiPen is? It's an I can't even say it this morning. Epinephrine dosage that if you're allergic to peanuts, say, and you have, and I can't say this word either, anaphylactic shock. You need immediate treatment for that, or you swell up. And so these EpiPens are now being provided free, and so this allows schools to put epinephrine pens and have them in storage at the school, and authorizes the ability for if the school wants to designate one person to do this, although anybody can really do it, they will have liability protection from that. So it's a great bill, and it hasn't come up for a vote yet, but I see it just flying through, and that's a great thing. So people will be happy to hear that. And another one is a bill that came out on landfills. Can you harvest the methane out of your landfill here in Carroll County? You can't? Okay, what this bill does is allow you to take your yard waste, if you have an ability to siphon off the methane from your landfill, to use it for purposes. And you see this quite often as you drive through the country, where there will be a fire up off a post somewhere along the landfill. What they're doing is pulling the methane out of there and just burning it off. And so yard waste, which produces a lot of methane if you put it in a landfill, has been banned from use or to be taken by landfills because you can blow up your landfill. But this bill allows you to do that if you have the ability to harvest that methane and use it. And you can, that's a source of fuel for many things. And if you can figure out some way to put that to good use, that's a great thing. And there's only 5 or 6, I think, that really can use this in the state. But it's a great thing for supervisors to think about in the future if you're on the landfill commission. And you already can utilize that. The expanding broadband bill also got through the funnel, and there's a couple different versions of that now, and so I was glad to see that come along. That's another great thing for rural Iowa, to be able to have broadband out in the country and in our smaller communities. And Carroll's very fortunate to have broadband access that just began, what was it, last summer? Or my years?
2010.
2000, is it that long ago already? That's great. So hopefully we can connect every acre, as Carroll likes to say, but that might be a little over optimistic. But people sure utilize it anymore, so it's very important. Another great thing that got through the first funnel is the PEPL funds for repairing school buses has been, they've changed the law there so you could use PEPL funds in school funds for maintenance of vehicles as well. I actually thought it was broader than that. They would allow them to use it wherever they felt a need was necessary, but as I read the bill today, it just allows for repairs to school buses, where in the past they could buy a new school bus, but they couldn't use it to repair the old one. So that's a first step, I think, there to helping schools with the financial crisis. So I think that's probably enough for the second question there, Hubert. So.
Okay, thanks, Mark. The next question that the committee put together was, please give an update on healthcare, including closures of institutions, funding, and managed care.
Well, there were several healthcare and mental health bills that made the funnel, and this last week we actually took quite a few of them up. We passed 46 bills, I think, last week, and several of them had to do with mental health. Some of them, and this is kind of a new term I hadn't heard before, have been called fig leaf bills, which is really trying to address the problem without causing big ripples in the system. The first one that passed that I voted for was Senate File 333, and that bill just would keep the mental health institutes open until the end of this fiscal year. The money had already been appropriated for them a year ago, and the governor's move to change to managed care, his thoughts were to close those and save that money as we could get to managed care as quick as possible. And the bill actually allows them to stay open and the funding to be there until the end of this fiscal year. So that is just kind of a Band-Aid. It doesn't solve the problem, but it does keep them viable, I think, until July 1. And there was another bill called Senate File 440 that dealt with the same problem, and it just said that they shouldn't close until the end of this fiscal year. So we're kind of repeating ourselves, but the problem is that we have 540,000 people on Medicaid now in Iowa since the expansion of Medicaid occurred, and this has changed the way we do business, really. Now those people all have a health plan that they can go to pay for the things that they need, and it's taxing the system quite a bit because there's not enough doctors and there's not enough mental health. Mental health was actually included in this program. Otherwise, you couldn't get insurance on mental illness even in your own private plans before. But this new plan will allow insurance for mentally ill people. And so those two bills, there are more that are kind of the same gender. They just sort of try to extend the system the way it's been until. The other problem that I see is that our regional, going to mental health regions instead of run by counties, was just created a year ago. Those new regions just started up last July 1st, and they haven't had time to really set up all the functions they need to do in a year. And so having an extra year in my mind, it would hurt. I would think that we could keep the mental health institutes, who take the most severe cases of mental illness. If we could keep them open a little longer, it would certainly help our regions to get up and running. And I emailed our local mental health director for the region now that is Crawford and Carroll, and there's 7 counties, I think Sac and Ida and Buena Vista is in our region. But she was having trouble placing people for committals and places to send them to beds, and her response was pretty positive, actually. They hadn't had the trouble that other places have had, so that's good news. That means the regions are starting to function and figure out how to do business now. But managed care is still the big bugaboo. There was a consultant in last week that was talking about the trouble with managed care. And managed care is typically a private for-profit business that will take over all the health needs of those Medicaid people and manage, what they're, kind of like an insurance company, what they're eligible for and what their deductibles would be and that sort of thing. And his comment was, and this is back in Chicago again, the managed care outfit that was up and running in Chicago, they had found 8,000 instances of people that had died that were still on Medicaid. So is there room for fraud and abuse in the managed care system? You bet. And it's a scary thing to think that could happen. So one of the other things we needed to do, and one of the bill speaks to it, is set up a oversight committee that would oversee the managed care system. And that included mostly legislators and on that committee. And I think that's a very important piece of this going to managed care, is somebody to oversee that group of people that will, when you think about them doing that for profit, that means they want to make money. And if they're making money by not allowing people to get their health care, that's not a good thing. And so that's one of the things that worries me about the whole managed care idea. So, is that the last question?
Well, what I was wondering is, would you care to venture into what happened across the rotunda to fill in for Brian on some of that?
Let's see. They were running bills last week as well, and when we pass a bill, we send it immediately across the hall to be taken up by the Senate or by the House, and they do the same thing. When they pass a bill, they message it to the Senate. It doesn't mean it comes up immediately when it gets there. It just gets put on our calendar, so what they pass one day, we may not see it even until a week later, but eventually it'll come back to us. So, but Dave Heaton is the representative from Mount Pleasant. He's actually the Health and Human Service Budget Committee, Subcommittee Chairman, and it's right in his backyard. So he's, understands the problem as well as anybody, and has been doing that function in the House for a long time. I have a lot of respect for Dave Heaton, and he's doing a good job there. But I'm not sure what bills they sent over, or if they took any of these up. But Brian Best is also on that committee in the House, so he would understand which ones were, and I haven't seen those. I had some comments here on a House File 202 that was sent over. I have to say this because we're in a dentist office. It allows volunteer licensure for retired dentists and dental hygienists who have been retired no more than 5 years. So with that, Randy's holding his hand up back there. I don't know if you were aware of that one. It passed out of the House, so it came to the Senate. I think that sounds like a great idea. So
it's for the dentists. We can get more help for our Mission of Mercy and things like that.
Right. So that's a great thing that came through last week too. So, any other questions on mental health? I suppose, since we're talking about that right at the moment, or points you want to make. You don't have to necessarily ask me. If you got a point you'd like to make, just go ahead and make it.
Well, I am here as a part of the whole village, and I appreciate very much your managed care comments. Several of us attended a DHS hearing a couple of weeks ago, and were a little dismayed to find out that it's a pretty done deal so far. But some of the comments said if we could take things more gradually, that we could avoid a lot of problems. And it's too bad about all the dead people in Chicago, but we have a lot of live ones here in our area that we're worried about. I appreciate too that did the oversight bill get through the funnel?
Yes.
Good. One of the members of the committee sent me a copy, and it looks like a very good bill.
All bills that deal with money are still alive. If they go to Ways and Means, that means there's no funnel for that committee or appropriations, either one. So this would be an interim board. It would be like creating a brand new board. So there's always money tied to that because you have expenses when you create a commission or a board like that. So it's still alive, I'm sure.
Well, as you say, with it being a for-profit company, we're going to have, as parents, somebody to appeal to, and this oversight committee looks like it'll be our best hope.
That's a great point. It is a place where citizens could appeal an issue, and you know what it's like sometimes. I don't mean to badmouth insurance companies, God bless them, we gotta have it. But you run to the end of the rope, where do you go if you have trouble with your insurance company? There's no place other than to stop paying your premium and go to a different company. That's not a good result here, because this is the last resort for many of the mentally ill. So, you know, the ability for having a place you can go to voice your complaint and get your voice heard is this committee. So, yeah, I have a question right there.
Is it true about that mental health institution in southern Iowa that's going to close, that they have 18 patients here and there's 8 full-time people taking care of those people? And it comes to $400 and some thousand odd dollars a year to take care of one person.
What we've been told, and it is about $400,000 per bed per year. So it's, but they take the acute care, and the Jerry sites. I can't say that word this morning. Geropsychiatric patients, and these are people that are usually committed, court ordered into a system, and they're either a threat of suicide or great violence and bodily harm, not only to themselves but to someone else. So a lot of these patients require 24-hour, and they have 7 of these sexual offender patients there as well, which requires a one-on-one staffing to monitor and control that. And they have 17 patients, I think, but they were asked already by the governor before we went to this session started, back in November, I think, to stop taking patients. And so their numbers have dropped. They have the ability there to have 60 beds. I was down there to tour it a couple of weeks ago, and the facility is over 100 years old, but when you walk into it, it's like walking into a museum a little bit. But it's in great shape. I didn't see any sign of the roof leaking. It's been maintained well. And it's bright and open. There's lots of windows in the place.
$400,000 a year plus for one patient. That seems kind of spendy, I would think. Don't you think that?
Yeah, it is. There's got to be a cheaper way, and that's why the managed care system of local having home and community-based services is called. That means having it done, having a service that's much closer to home, that's probably much cheaper, it has a lower staffing. But for these acute care people, not everybody can handle that or be able to staff for it. And how do you know how many people, are going to be there? And so you have to be up and ready for them if they come. So.
Right. But if it's court ordered, so it's almost like a prison for those type of people, actually, or is it not like a?
It is, but it turns into their home quite quickly. Most of these individuals down there, or the staff are really they have no visitors typically, and the staff becomes their family. And
so those 6 other people, if it closes, they'll probably end up back in the prison system if it's a court-ordered system.
Probably, which does it much cheaper. I mean, if you put them in the prison, that's the cheapest place you can put them as far as spending money on mental illness. But that's really not. They don't deserve being in prison unless they harm somebody, And so, but there's a brand new prison just to the north of the Clarinda facility.
Right.
So, yes, Ron.
I had the opportunity to attend the DHS forum that was held in Des Moines a week ago, along with several parents, and it was conducted by Director Palmer. And I had the opportunity to make a comment there, and I thought it would be good for you to hear the comment that I made. The Kaiser Family Foundation, which is a national nonprofit think tank, it's bipartisan. They focus on healthcare research nationally, and they came out in 2012, and their expert analysis on managed care and the delivery of disability services was that managed care was not an effective tool of cost savings in delivering disability services, that there are no short-term cost savings, that if you're looking for cost savings, it's over a period of time, and it's because there will be better clinical management of pharmacy and better clinical management of hospitalizations, so preventing hospitalizations. But the actual delivery of long-term services, there is no cost savings in it. Governor Perry of Texas implemented managed care for disability services back in 2013, but they're implementing it over a 7-year period. And the reason that they're doing that is that they will evaluate each step along the way, analyze it, and make changes. And the point I made to Director Palmer is the people that we serve have co-occurring medical conditions, physical conditions, and mental health conditions. Their needs are not predictable. They are very complex, and they're ever-changing. And Director Palmer has talked about managed care as a way to have a better basis of stability to predict what budget expenses are going to be for future years and contain the cost of Medicaid dollars spent. And so my comment to him was, you know, as you put together the RFP, would you please give strong consideration to creating a system that's sustainable and creating evaluation and analysis and adjustments as we go along. You know, all we can do is appeal to elected officials. The governor has come out and said this is what we're going to do. Director Palmer is his staff. So really, we can appeal to Governor Branstad. We can appeal to you as our representatives. And all I would ask is that you help tell our message.
Thank you, Rhonda, and I appreciate those words, and I'm glad you told them, gave them right to Director Palmer. As you said, he's appointed by the governor and has done that job for many years. So he understands the problems that DHS faces, and but he's there at the bidding of the governor, and so I'm more than happy to take those same things back to our committee meetings and respond in the same way. One of the bills that did pass this week in HHS was an agreement, a compact with mental health providers outside of the state. And this could be something that would help Clarinda in the long run, because now Missouri maybe, which has, well, I can't speak to that too well. I don't know how many mental health institutes are in Missouri, but if they had a person in Missouri that needed help and could be up to Clarinda in a half an hour or less, they'd be able to take him at Clarinda, and that bill is received quite well, so that it kind of opens up our ability to keep some of these places open, because they could have patients from outside the state of Iowa to help cover the cost too.
Mark, just a comment on that Clarinda facility. I don't know how many of you have ever been to that place, or if anybody in here has visited it, but the 500,000 or 400-some thousand is very high. But what is ironic here is that our governor has said that facility is inadequate, yet the state has spent millions of dollars in the last 3 and 4 years totally refurbishing the inside of that place. It is very modern, very clean, up to date. All new windows, new elevators, the whole facility has been refurbished. And so it seems ironic that we're trying to close that now after we've spent that money on it. Yes, the 500,000 seems high, but they do require 24-hour, 3 shifts a day, plus, you know, the office staff, the laundry staff, the kitchen staff, and so you can see why the cost does get high in that place.
I think the frustration many of us have is the fact that government does this all the time. We spent millions of dollars to build up a tourism industry here in Iowa. Then we sort of cut off our nose to spite our face by now, okay, I'm going there. We start school 3 months or 3 weeks early in August and cut their season right off at during its highest point. And you've seen where we spent a lot of money to create that system, and now we're kind of doing it at a disadvantage when we do things like that, and that happens. You see that happening a lot, and it's very frustrating because it's not good allocation of funds, is what it is. Yes, ma'am.
Virginia Hageman. There's been a lot of press about some of the crisis mental health is dual addiction problems. Is there anything, conversation going on about what they're going to do on that side of the problem? Drug and alcohol.
Drug and alcohol, that's what she's talking about. A lot of times those two go together. They'll have a mental illness, and because of the mental illness, they'll start drinking, and so they'll have come in with either a drug problem or a drinking problem on top of a mental illness problem. So you have two things to fix there at once. So there is a lot of talk about how to handle that, and Mount Pleasant is one of the locations that handles dual diagnosis patients. I don't believe they do it in Clarinda, but they do in Mount Pleasant. So if that closes, it also creates, a shortage of beds. Although the governor's plan is to move all these beds from the two institutes in southern Iowa, Mount Pleasant and Clarinda, to Independence and Cherokee. And that would be another way to save funds if you get more people in one place. But it also makes, for families, then they have to travel an extra 4-hour drive, or at least 2 hours to get there, and it's not the best for the family. So I guess that's as much as I know about dual diagnosis, but it is a big problem here in Iowa. So
There's very few private dual diagnosis units. Very few.
yeah, there's very few. That's right.
Okay, is there any other questions that you have besides mental health? I would ask that you state your name and if you're support or represent something, and if you would get to your question fairly quickly. So with that, Dr.
John Cook, I just wanted to ask, Senate File 331, I believe it is, would authorize online registration, for voter registration. And I understand that that's through the funnel. I just wanted to know what the prospects are for that. I noticed that the auditors like that, the Iowa Association of County Auditors support it. And it's the practice in about 24 other states, and it's a question of money, and it sounds like a good idea to me.
It sounds like a good idea, and probably would be if you could be sure that your internet system was up and functioning without the ability of being crashed. And so it's going to come up in the Senate, and it'll probably pass the Senate, I'm pretty sure, because it's a bill that will be promoted by the leadership there in the Senate. My question is to you, often we go to caucus, and what is a caucus? It's just a group of, it's all the Republicans in one room and all the Democrats in the other. So if I could turn this place loose, I could call this a caucus, and I'd just, ask you the question, do you think that, you think this is a good idea or not? And let you hoop and holler or wave your hand if you think that's a good idea. You're my caucus right here. Literally today, this is the caucus for me. And my worry here is that it's so easy to get abused by hackers in the internet system. If we had a broadband system that we could protect it, that would make this a whole lot safer in my mind than where it's at right now. So how many think would agree with online registration, voter registration. Hold up your hand. Just, we don't have to speak, but I'll get an idea. Okay, all right, that's about half, I would guess. And so that didn't help at all, because half means I get to decide. So if we can get broadband to become statewide, and you had to have a voter, one of the other proposals was identification for registry. You have to show your ID. Now, if you put those two together, I can get real comfortable with it. But if you don't have to show ID to prove that you're at least a resident and a citizen of Iowa, I don't know. If you can just do that without showing that and proving it, then it becomes a little more vague to me on whether that's a good idea or not. Hubert, I've got a whole list of, since I'm in caucus now, with your permission, I've got a whole list of bills that cleared, and we can go down that list, and you'll be surprised at what's on here. The first one that made the funnel was the gas tax. All right, you know how that went. Number 2 is legalizing possession and sale of fireworks. How many think that's a great idea? Who doesn't think it's a good idea? Okay, looks like the no's have got it here. All right, I'm going to put a little no there. Raise the state minimum hourly wage to $8.75 by July 1st of 2016. That's still alive. How many think? Here's the plan. It would go up. It's currently $7.25. So the plan is to raise it up 75 cents to $8, and then after 6 months it would go up another 75 cents to $8.75. How many think that's a good idea? Okay. How many think it's not a good idea? All right. I think the ayes have it here. My official counter is over here.
Now you tell me.
All right, I'm going to put okay. Rewrite gun laws to allow suppressors to keep permits confidential. How many think that's important? Did you understand the question? All right. To rewrite the gun laws to allow suppressors to be legal and keep permits confidential. In other words, you have a permit to carry, they can't print it in the paper on who has it. Okay, that's the 2 issues here. All right, who says that's not a good idea? Oh, it looks like the ayes have it here. Okay. Expand broadband access to underserved areas, not undeserved. Underserved areas.
I have a question about that.
Okay.
When you say expand broadband, you mean taking state tax dollars to help?
That's what it means. The bill, I think, puts money in a grant fund that the companies could grant money. And if I'm wrong here, Chuck, that's part of one of the bills.
To the phone companies.
Yes.
But no, that's not what the bill is right now. The governor's plan was to put $3 million into grant dollars, and the CIO Bob VW wanted to put another $2 million in, and that's been stripped out of the Senator Sauter's bill, and they want to go with a property tax credit or exemption.
Thank you, Chuck. I was going to say there's 2 different versions now. There's the Senate version and the governor's version. So how many of you think putting broadband out to every community and as far out in the country as you can get? Because, Chuck, am I wrong? If you have broadband in your local town and your phone company's in that town, does having broadband there increase the range of the ability to have broadband out in the rural areas? Like I live 2 miles from Vail. If you're within 2 miles, I can get it over my telephone. It's not real fast, but it's a lot faster than dial-up.
You get it with DSL, and there's distance limitations on how far out you can go. So you can, but it all depends on what's the definition of broadband, right? Right now, the definition is, it was 4 meg down, 1 meg up by the FCC. They increased it last year to 10 by 2. Now the new proposal is 25 meg down, 3 meg up as the minimum for broadband. So you'll never really ever be able to get to your house over copper lines unless you've got a fiber optic network. Even the wireless won't be able to transmit
Did you all hear
that.
that?
Yes.
Okay, so, yes, hands up. How about no? Okay, thank you. Looks like the ayes have it.
Can I have permission to comment on that?
Sure, go ahead.
Shouldn't we let free enterprise dictate what happens rather than, are we looking at broadband like our road systems, like they're needed because we need roads? I mean, what's the philosophy of this, behind this? Is it, what's your opinion on it?
What's my opinion? Well, I always like free enterprise unless it's managed care. Because
some of these places, it's gonna take like, I mean, hundreds of thousands just to get to 1 or 2 locations.
that's the problem, isn't it, Chuck? Because, you know, if you're trying to get to every house, it becomes very difficult, very pricey. And the thing I can relate to is when the RECs, the rural electric co-ops, tried to, you know, they faced that back in the 30s, which I'm not that old, by the way. That's long before my time, but if it wouldn't have been for the federal government and the financing that they gave to rural co-ops to put power lines to every place out in the country, that would have never happened. So maybe the answer is to repay them, make the loans up front and then repay them, because I think that's kind of how the RECs worked at the time.
But maybe we should use like, maybe give them a tax incentive instead of spending our money if they want to put up a satellite. I know it's not as fast as fiber optic, but some type of a dish or something in those areas instead of spending hundreds of thousands to get it to their place or their business in the country.
It's a good point. Yeah,
Just to speak to that, I'll just speak in support of it, just only not because I'm a big fan of spending public money on something that ought to be a private enterprise, but, you know, I live in Manning, a town of 1,500 people, and we have pretty good internet access there. I think we were recognized by the governor's office recently for that, but I think it's important to expand broadband so that economic development can happen in these small towns like Vale and other towns that size, because, you know, without broadband access, without those sort of things, businesses cannot operate there. And so if you're living in a small town and you want a small town to thrive, we have to have broadband to have jobs and to have enterprise and to bring people that are childbearing age back to these communities so they can grow. Otherwise, they've got to go to the economic centers and work there and live there and grow the population there.
good points. Yes.
Is the broadband argument similar to the postal service arguments that we used when, in the early history of our country, where we needed mail delivered to every household? I mean, is it the same argument?
Well, you know, you're dealing with information. It puts certain areas at a great disadvantage if you don't have it to areas that do. I don't have a good answer for it. Probably is a similar problem.
Yeah, I don't expect an answer. I'm just saying it's something that
Yes.
is fun to think about.
Yes. Yes, Chuck.
Mark, just a comment on the gentleman who spoke about the economic development. I think one of the things that people are forgetting about as well on the broadband bill is what it can do for our school systems. The school systems are really pushing technology. They're all going to one-on-one initiatives. I know Arweva, in our area, Arweva, Glidden, Kemper, and Carroll community school districts are all going to a one-on-one initiative, which means the students have either an iPad or some type of a device that they can do online homework. They're putting devices in school buses, so when the kids are going to these different events, they don't miss out on trying to do their homework. More and more education is being pushed across those types of devices. When these kids leave the confines of those schools, they go back to the farm. They can't do their homework. I've talked to many people that say they drive their kids into the library. Now, is that right? What are we doing to our school systems and economic growth is definitely a business that doesn't have a broadband connection. They won't go there. It's one of the top 3 things. They look for probably power, some type of water. They look for what they're going to pay in taxes, and then they need a broadband connection. So, doing it with a property tax, some type of credit, the cost to do it is very high, and that's correct. We're probably talking between, depending where you got to go, it's between $24,000 and $45,000 a customer out in some of the rural areas. When you figure in all the engineering, all the permitting, all the different things, we got to pay property tax on those investments. There's got to be a return. And while it sounds great to say push it out into the private sector, if the business plan was there, it'd be being done. And it's not. So because there's just not enough customers to pay for it. So if the state and the governor really wants to say it's important, they're going to have to come up with something, and to do it. And right now, they're also trying to put in a bill that if there is a property tax exemption, that if there's conduit placed, that anybody should have access to the conduit. I guarantee you that if that's in the bill, there's no way that I would consider it, because we're going to have to maintain the conduit. To let anybody go into that is just ridiculous. So it's a real touchy subject, but it is expensive. But you got to look long term. Wireless is not long term. It's a Band-Aid. It's a total Band-Aid.
Thanks, Chuck. Okay, now this is what would happen in caucus. I would ask you, and we've got to go back out and vote. Everybody know what they're doing now? Now, get out there and vote. That's kind of how caucuses go. Question over here.
I'd like to just make a general comment.
Sure.
Rather than using the word broadband, because technology changes so fast and nobody can keep up with it, probably the right verbiage, and I'm for it, is that we use the word technology instead of broadband, because I think that things will change.
It's a very good point. How many years ago did we put in the Iowa fiber optic network? And while that still works quite well, and it was broadband and it was fiber optic too when it was originally put in. But right now it's kind of a dead horse. Nobody wants to use it except for a couple of hospitals. Okay. All right, Josh.
Oh, you said Josh.
Excuse me. I'm thinking of Josh Burns. He ran the.
He's a nice guy, so thank you. I know him. So the NCAA tournament's about ready to start. Baseball season's just around the corner. There was a fantasy sports gaming bill that went through the Senate, headed to the House, I believe. What are your thoughts on that? A lot of people, do the NCAA tournament thing, and I guess the legislation would allow for legal payouts for that kind of gambling in Iowa.
We discussed this and passed it out of the Senate on Thursday or Wednesday, and it passed. I voted against it because I see it as an expansion of gambling, for one. And the point was brought up that with the technology that's out there now, you could even bet on your local high school team if you wanted to, that your best shooter would make so many three-pointers, and while that was banned, they took it out of the bill because, they took the ability to vote on those types of, or gamble on those kind of events out of there. And nobody would be for it if they thought you could go and bet on your local basketball team or football team in the same instance. And that's basically why I was against it. But I don't know what will happen to it in the House. There's a lot of email on it. Okay, here's the question. Caucus. How many think that expanded gambling through sports fantasy is a good thing? Pull up your hand. I'm seeing 2 or 3 is all. How many think it's a bad thing? Hold up your hand. Okay, it's overwhelmingly a bad thing. Okay. Thank you, but it's down the list, way down here.
What was the numbers in the Senate? What was the numbers in the Senate on that vote?
I think it was 37. I'd have to look it up, Doc. It's not on the top of my head, but I think it was like 37 to 13 or something like that. 37 to 12. We've had members missing all week, so sometimes we only have 40.
Latvius must have got 2 of them. Latvius must have got 2 of them. Yeah.
Okay, here's the next question. Making testing while driving, or making texting while driving a primary offense. This is still out there. You think that's a good idea, texting while driving, and making it a what kind of an offense? A primary, let's see. Yeah, before we go, let's let John Word speak.
If you want a police state, support this bill. As a primary offense, all it would take for an officer to see you look down, oh, I think they were texting, and pull you over.
Could you describe what you mean by a primary defense?
Right now, they cannot stop you for texting alone. They have to stop you for a violation, and then they can give you a ticket for texting. This bill would allow you to be stopped for cause to believe you're texting, which I venture to say would be nothing more than looking down.
Changing your radio station.
Looking down to pick up your coffee, looking down to change your radio. And if you want a police state, support this type of bill. Because it will allow the police to stop anybody, anytime, anywhere.
Right. Okay. Any other points want to be made before we vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Jean Ludwig, just
Jean.
there. I agree with that comment because texting isn't the only bad thing we do while we're driving. Some of us put on makeup, some of us do reading newspapers, some of us look at maps, you know, drink coffee. Yeah, drink ice cream, you know. So are we gonna have a law against each of those things as well? They're also dangerous.
Any other points want to be made before we vote on this? All right, all who think that should be a primary offense, raise your hand after heard. We don't do this, excuse me, we really don't do this step in a regular caucus. In a caucus setting, the chairman usually does it, the majority leader doesn't ask people to vote on whether we should all vote for it or against it. We just kind of talk ourselves into it. All right, again, up if you're for it, hands up. How many opposed? All right, it's pretty much overwhelmingly opposed.
Thanks, John.
Be sure to have people name themselves.
Your name's not going to be in the paper on how you voted here, by the way.
You didn't have a roll call.
I did have a roll call.
I couldn't write fast enough.
Here's just a little technical information. You do a roll call vote, of course, then they record your vote. And when you vote on the floor, the bill is in the chamber, you vote, you have your name up in lights, and you hit the button at your desk, it'll change the color of your light up above and record your vote. So everybody can see who's voted for and against immediately when it happens and what the number is. Now, in committees, you don't have that kind of a voting machine. It's either called a short form, which means it's just up and down, yay and nay. And then you can record against something if you want to, because a voice vote, you know, they just ask for a voice vote. Everybody says yay, and you vote nay. Yay and nay, I always wondered why they use yay and nay. Yes and no, you can't hear a nay vote when you're voting yay. So, let's see. Assisting schools in combating bullying of students. Anybody want to speak to that one? You ready to vote? Yes.
Well, I would like to say bullying is in fact basically assault anyway. Don't we have laws to protect the children and the people in our state already? I mean, we need more regulation for bullying.
Can you all hear his point? There's already laws, and there is lots of laws. I don't think you could pass a law that's going to prevent it either. It just, in schools, it typically happens. A lot of times it's people with disabilities are the ones that are getting bullied. Is a big part of this problem. But still, you can pass a law and it's not going to prevent it. What the law does is try to train people that can observe this and try to create a way of handling it. That's what the bill tries to do. But that one's still out there, and it's Senate File 345. I've discovered it. It's taken me a long time to find that bill, by the way. Yes, comment?
Is this bill pushing more responsibility onto the teachers then?
It would train at least one teacher a year in each school system. See, there's
But
money
it's-
tied in this.
It's actually, when the student is off campus or whatever, you're still making the teacher, the superintendent, whatever, responsible for that child, which it really shouldn't be. I mean, they are responsible for when they're in school, and that's basically, yeah, that's your responsibility. But if they expand it too much, then, you know, where can the liabilities sets in? I mean, it's just too broadband, I think, broad-wide, you know, broad-based.
Well, how do the administrators in the schools feel about the bullying bills? I mean, is it more of a tool and instrument for them to enforce the bullies or suppress them, or what? How do they feel about that, do you know?
I don't know, and Rod, I asked Rod this question 2 weeks ago, I think, and schools all have a bullying policy now, but I don't know if there's no teeth in it. This bill would require them to get in contact with the parents in very short order.
Because, I mean, they're going to have to, you know, enforce this. What's next? You know, hiring security personnel, you know, is that what they're after? I mean, what do you think is the whole point behind bullying bills? More control? Is it more, what is it?
Just a quick comment. In today's world and children growing up, a lot of people don't even know what bullying is.
More control.
Hubert, you're probably one that doesn't know what bullying is. But anyway, just a quick comment.
I've been a victim of it, but
Yeah, I've been a victim also. It is the way that it is, and today's kids growing up, becoming teachers and everything else, it's too broad on what bullying is or is not. So I think that it is good for additional education through the school system to support that.
Thank you. What's really set this thing off is the internet. Maybe it's broadband. The bad part is kids were getting bullied from their peers when they got home on they were either getting text on their phone, which I think, I shouldn't say this, but probably I wouldn't allow a cell phone in a school system anymore. I don't think that's a good idea. Maybe there's already laws against that, I don't know. But those things have led to suicides, and we know that for a fact, because they're being bullied. They can't get away from it. Like I've said before, we can pass all kinds of laws. It's not going to stop bullying. It's part of human nature. He's never going to get away from it. All we can do is set up a system that will try to reinforce good behavior and give teachers the ability to handle it in a systematic way that everybody agrees to. So, how many are in favor of the bill? Say, hold up your hand. Against bullying? How about no's? Hands. Okay. It appears to be about 50-50.
I have a question. What is the parental role in this bill? And are parents pushing? I was an educator for 25 years, now retired, and my understanding is that there is a push for schools to take on expanded responsibility beyond school hours. And I'd like to know who is pushing for that. I don't believe that is fair to our educators and administrators personally, but who is pushing for that? And is there a role for parental oversight in this bill, which I believe outside of school hours, that is a big part of their function as parents. Are they a part, where are the parents on this?
Quite honestly, I don't have a good answer for you. Parents
That's
to
okay.
me have a
I
big
don't
part
know.
in this.
I'm not
as
up
far
to
as-
speed on it,
Yeah.
yeah.
But the bill appears to be promoted mostly by the LGBT group, because they're also a source of being bullied a lot. And so the great amount of time in lobbying comes from that group.
Sure.
And, you know, if that's what it takes to cure bullying, and you know, I'm for less bullying. Hubert says he got bullied a lot. I can see why. See, he's being bullied right now. And you're never going to let me come here by myself again, right? So, how are we doing? Should I stop? Or
Well,
this has been kind of fun, actually. And this kind of puts the response back to you guys. And that's really what I'm here to hear, is what you guys think about it. Anyway, yes, Richard.
I assume that there was a lawsuit filed yesterday on the water issue. What's the conversation in the legislature on that situation?
Well, there's a lot of people walking around kicking, if they were outside, they would be kicking rocks down the road on this issue. If you didn't hear the point, the Des Moines Water Works filed the lawsuit against SAC and Buena Vista and Calhoun counties. What they're trying to do is make them just like a point source, like a city, for all these watersheds that put water into the Raccoon River. Now, there's a lot more than just in Buena Vista and Sac and Calhoun counties that put water into the Raccoon River. Carroll County, of course, does the same thing, and everybody, and you didn't do it on purpose because it's always been that way. But Des Moines Water Works wants to have a court case will spell out what that means to be a point source, and they want these drainage districts to be declared a point source, which means they'd have to get a permit to allow water to go into the system. And there's...
I'd like for Richard to comment on that. It
Sure.
seems to me like the Des Moines Water Works, they're picking on us, the smaller counties. I'm from Sac County. We don't have as much political pull as like Dallas County or the counties further downstream, or Carroll County. And that's why they're coming after us. And they're coming after us because we don't have that permit. The Des Moines Water Works, they take the nitrates out, and then they put it right back into the water. So they're taking it out, and then they're putting it back in, so everybody downstream has to deal with the nitrates they put back in. Now what? It looks to me like it's an EPA issue, or I just don't think it's fair for Sac or BV County.
And I've been asked several times, why did they pick on BV and SAC and Calhoun? And I don't know the reason, but I'm guessing because they're kind of the top of the watershed, and they're great examples of drainage districts. I mean, you got to go to some place that has a lot of drainage. There's only one in Crawford County, so it's really not an issue for Crawford, and it goes west instead of east. And
what do they have to say about it if they're putting it right back in? Oh, we have a permit from the DNR. Well, why don't we just get a permit? And I think the permitting process is going to be an issue.
And I think that's what the bill's trying, or the lawsuit's trying to do, is require them to get a permit.
What is that? Is it, do you have to give them money, give the state money?
Well, it has to involve money, you know, it's something with the DNR, it has to involve money to get the permit. It also would add regulation on them on what's coming out of that pipe at the bottom of the ditch.
Sure.
Yes.
Just to make some comments too.
Adam Schweers, by the way.
Adam Schweers, Mayor Carroll. Municipally, we're trying to work in a rural area. We're trying to work with agriculture to come up with ideas as far as science and things of that nature. But as a municipality, we're looking at about $7 million worth of upgrades to our wastewater treatment facility, which is only a little over 12 years old. And through our next permitting process, we're likely to have to additionally filter nitrates and phosphorus. And right now, what's coming out of our pipe and out of our facility is actually cleaner than what we would drill a well and pump it out of the ground. So honestly, the regulations right now that that they're imposing on this 10,103 citizens in Carroll alone, it's ridiculous. We're contributing maybe 6% to that nitrogen and phosphorus issue in Des Moines and in the Raccoon River, and we're looking at $7 million worth of upgrades spread out over just 10,000 people. So it's a big issue. I mean, agriculture for sure is coming under fire, and smaller rural counties are coming under fire, but our smaller municipalities that are point source regulated are also coming under extreme fire and extreme expenses, and it's like right now.
Thanks, Adam. Gene.
Gene Miners, Carroll County Supervisor. There were several of us who just came back from ISAC, who's down in Des Moines the last 3 days. And I will say that this was a subject that was brought up at every session we had. And to give you a clear answer.
This is the new gas tax?
No, not the new gas tax in regard to this lawsuit. There is not going to be no clear answer on this thing. As if anyone understands nitrates generate a lot of things from dead vegetation degrading to coming out in the rain and all over. So to get this to be a point source is going to be hard to fight in the court. The one thing that will be the one thing for sure on this is going to be a long, drawn out battle, and it's going to be an expensive battle on both sides. What's going to come out of it, I don't think anybody can tell you that for sure. I mean, both sides have their opinions, and it's just going to be a bad situation. But just to let you know, it's a topic that's was very hot at our sessions down there, and I think will be in the future.
Do you know if now that Des Moines shut down their nitrate removal plant, it's shut down now? It was for 2 months, it was running full speed, and now it isn't. Is that true right now?
You know, just from what I read in the paper, it sounds like they've been started up again. But there's also, you know, there's data shows that over the years with these new programs that have been instituted through agriculture, that the actual nitrates have been coming down over time. So yes, some of these new programs are working. This is not a situation that happened overnight, and it's not going to get cured overnight. I mean, I think if Des Moines Waterworks thinks this is going to get cured overnight, they're sad. Because there's as I said, there's too many contributing factors to the generation of nitrates. There's no way you can point source that anything. You know, one of the things that we've been doing in agriculture has been putting these set-asides along rivers. So what's on there? A lot of vegetation, right? That vegetation dies, it goes through its process, it's generating nitrates. So, you know, even your snow, when it comes out of the sky or rain, there's nitrates in there. It's going to be hard to prove that point source as far as I'm concerned.
I'm going to close with this comment. I woke up at 4 o'clock on Wednesday morning, I think it was, thinking about what should the senator from Calhoun, and which isn't me, by the way. Calhoun is Tim Cranberry from Fort Dodge. But the senator from Buena Vista County and Sac County, what should he be doing? And everything I come up with is retaliation. So is that going to move the process along in a good mode? No. I don't think of myself as being one who wants to retaliate. That would be bullying again.
I'm just going to say, don't you want to be a bully?
Well, a lot of people would want us to be a bully. Well, so my thoughts at 4 o'clock in the morning went to, well, what could I do? What kind of a bill would I pass that would, or at least drop, that would do us any good out here? And the first thing, well, since they're putting the nitrates back in the water, you know, they'd have to pay a fee for doing that. That would be one retaliatory thing to do. And the other one, I should have wrote these down, shouldn't I? Before, what does Seinfeld say? He gets up and writes his jokes down because he forgets them by the time he wakes up again. But there was what's the second thing you could do is, make them suffer over putting the nitrates back in the water. And I had two things, I swear I did. But both of them were not going to improve the situation, so what do we do to improve the situation? And I think that's where the Des Moines Waterworks came from, is they were just trying to, they woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning too, what do we do about this? And unfortunately, they went to retaliation on their proposal and, you know, point the finger at farmers. And farmers, you know, most of them are willing to try to do something. They don't want their nitrates down there. But Gene's exactly right. There's 33,000 tons of nitrogen in the air above every acre in Iowa, and it's not available to the plants. It's got to get into a nitrate form before it's available. Well, so how do you get rid of nitrates the quickest? You plant corn, because what plant takes up nitrates faster than anything? It's corn. And so what have we done? We've been planting corn at higher populations we've ever done, so we're eating up a lot of nitrates, but all that fodder we've created gets worked into the soil, and the microbes go to work on it, and they turn that fodder back into nitrate again. And you know, that's how we get the microbes work on the plant tissue, is how you end up with nitrate. And now that's available to go down for the water system if we have lots of rain. So any advice you can give me on this issue, I'd appreciate it. It's great to be your senator. It's really been an amazing 3 years, and there's one more year in this term, and we'll see how things go. But it's been a wonderful 3 years. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks again, Mark, for being here. I want to introduce the committee members from the Chamber Legislative Committee that are here. Karen, Jim, Gene Ludwig, Frank Armstrong, Shannon Landau, and Ann Stewart. Those two have to have the job of herding us legislative members down the right direction. With that, I again want to thank the Dental Association for hosting this. The next